Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome to the Sacred Soul Shift series. I'm your host, Janessa, your trusted soul navigator and energy alchemist. In this series, we'll embark on soul-stirring adventures through the realms of intuition and self-healing with women across all modalities, where ancient wisdom and modern insights intertwine. So if you're tired of the scripted routine and ready for healing and growth, my kindred spirit, this series is crafted just for you. It's time for your Sacred Soul Shift.
And we have a very exciting topic I am very curious to learn about this morning, one that I feel is close to my heart because I feel I have this problem, as a lot of spiritual empathic women, I think, have. Let me just tell you a little bit about Janessa as you all log in. Her bio, guys, she is a beautiful spiritual healer and coach. Her mission is to bring love and connection to those who have all but given up on having fulfilling and nurturing relationships. And I feel that deeply because that is, I think, a point where I am at right now. At the core of every single human is a need for connection, yet we inadvertently create patterns to push others away to protect ourselves. I feel that deeply. Thus, we never create loving relationships we desire, right? So true. The relationships we have with others are the reflection of the relationships we have with ourselves. Janessa teaches through self-discovery how to love and embrace the self so you can then extend this love and connection to others. I just feel that so beautiful, and so many women, I think, will benefit from Janessa's beautiful spirit in the world. I'm just going to bring her in. So, Janessa, thank you so much for being here and sharing your special wisdom with us today about relationships and the patterns we inadvertently create. I know, especially for me, being a healer, I tend to draw to me a lot of toxic, shitty people that need fixing, all that kind of thing to me. I know there's a lot of women that create these patterns in their life, and I'm so excited to learn today how we do that. I've had a little bit of an insight reading your material, but I can't wait for you to share with the rest of the women what this is all about. I just want to start. I always love to start with asking the question, especially with spiritual healers that, have all these different modalities, where they started their journey and how they tended to find their spiritual journeys. What drew them to all the different modalities that you teach and use now with your life? I'd love to hear your journey.
Well, my journey began honestly in the criminal justice field. And sometimes it's like, do we really need to go back that far? But I think it's important. And so I began out of college working in the prison, and then I worked in probation in a very active gang territory with offenders who were nearly on the brink of going to prison. And then I also worked in drug court. And so it's just was such an impacting part of my journey, because then when I move forward into my own spiritual journey and learning the modalities that I have, which I'll get to that in just a second, it was then with more awareness and awakening that I reflected on my time with the population that you serve in the criminal justice system. And I saw, just like you said in my bio, that at the core of all of us is the need for connection. And there were some staff members who would have some consistent challenges with their relationships with inmates or probationers. And for the most part, that wasn't something I necessarily dealt with. I mean, not to say that there weren't some, because not every single person that you will encounter in that realm who has the courts hanging over them are going to just be easy and comply with everything. But the takeaway really was the respect that I was showing, I was getting back, even from people who had a very different perspective on life and the value of, humans and material items and all sorts of things across the board. So that was one of my biggest and impacting things about working in the criminal justice system, trying to help people get to a different place in life, or a better place in life. And along the way, I just really got burnt out, and I was sick, and I had a lot of anxiety. Sometimes I dealt with depression. as I mentioned, I was burnout. I was getting bronchitis all of the time. I went to the gym. I ate my chicken and my vegetables, and I just did not thrive as a human on any level, mental, emotionally, spiritually, physically, none of it. And so when I was working in drug court, there was a person that was in the drug court, and they didn't really want to be there, but they also wanted their felony charge dismissed. And so they were barely getting by doing what they needed to do. And their counselor actually recommended that they go see an energy psychologist. And the individual became much more jovial, so much more amenable, easier to work with, calm, friendly. It would smile, changed the perspective with his daughter. And I had no idea what was happening. I just knew, like, sometimes you just know when you know, right? And I just knew I needed to experience this. And so I picked up the phone and made a call. And that's really when my journey began. It was to, heal all of the stuff that I had going on. And then along the way in healing myself, I came to realize this is my soul's purpose. And I want to share these gifts with other people. There's a better way of living than to be sick and struggling and in hardship.
Sure, yeah, definitely agree. And what sort of modalities do you work with today? Is it just in the relationship sector, or what else do you do?
I work with energy psychology and also functional medicine coaching. So I combine it all into relationship coaching because the relationship that we have with ourselves really reflects all of our life out into the world, the relationships that we have with other people. And I just really feel like it's the foundation of creating a joyful, happy life of harmony. We have to be in that space where we are super content with every part of ourselves, the good, the not so good, the frustrating, the amazing, the strengths, the weaknesses, the quirks,
Yeah, for sure.
all of it. And when we can embrace every part of ourselves, that's when we can start showing up for other people. But it takes some work to get there. And then it also takes some also focus in some of these other real sneaky, unknown ways that we recreate patterns that we're familiar with rather than really following our true self and our true calling and what we need and or our partner, right? To have something that
Yeah,
works for just two people versus all of the other influences that we encounter along the way.
so true. And I feel like a lot of women, especially more so than men, really put their needs second, especially in relationships. We tend to kind of more go with the flow and just, whatever makes you happy, and without, putting our foot down and embracing our personal power and telling other people what we want and what we desire within the relationship, and even on our own in relationships, we don't necessarily, stand up for ourselves, and not just standing up for ourselves, but, stepping into our power as one half of the relationship. We tend to just let it go. And then along the way, that kind of, it avalanches down the hill, and just at the end, you're just like, fuck, like I've just lost myself while being in this relationship. Yeah. I find I do that. And I feel you so deeply coming from your background. I used to work in a gambling lounge for nearly 10 years, and while also having my spiritual business on the side. And I spent my days with drug dealers, drug users, old cranky people, people with money issues, like all the heavy energy, and it drains me. And I got burnt out at the end of it. And people would just come and tell me their stories, right? And I get that because I'm so open, and like my energy draws in a lot of these people. But when I got home at the end of every day, I was so drained. I'm just like, after 7 years or whatever it was, I'm like, no, put my foot down. I'm like, I can't take this anymore. These are the people that need my help, but I literally can't spend all day, every day around them. I see they need the healing, and they're not willing they haven't put their hand up and said, I need this. So I had to step out myself and, call back my energy and my inner peace, because you just get to that point where you're just like so burnt out and overwhelmed with all the energies that are around.
Absolutely. Yeah. I second what you just shared, because there's such a dramatic difference in working with people who have that inner light lit and they want it, versus people that are just on the circumstances of life are pushing them in a direction that they're still, a salmon swimming upstream.
They don't see the doors out, and you can't open them for them. They just need to want it first, right? and once someone clicks and that little click happens inside their head, and yes, you can change, and yes, it is possible for me, then they just become so open to everything, and they're just like a sponge with all of the information, and they want to know every single possible way to, get out of the hole that people create for themselves. And that's amazing. And they're the people that I want to work with, because it's so beautiful for me that women want to open up and empower themselves. That's where I get my juice. That's what that's my passion. I love it.
Yeah. You shared something else really vulnerable and beautiful as well when you were talking about your own experience of attracting in people who are broken, I think is what you had said, but along that theory, right? And I hear you. I did the same exact thing. And I feel as though there is that tendency that you alluded to with empaths or healers where, well, we have viewed ourselves as needing healing to get to where we are. And so we sit in that pattern then of still attracting similar vibe of individuals.
Yeah.
And then we think that, well, we can heal them or fix them or change them. And that's a really huge point in the work I do, is that really we're changing our underwear, we're changing the channel of the TV. When you are aligned with the person that you're with, there's nothing that needs to be changed. We can just embrace them for who they are and see that in ways that they may act out or express themselves in a way that is hurtful or less than ideal. It is something that needs healed. And when we can meet that with compassion and have an equal weighted investment in the relationship where both people are willing to put in that work to heal what is theirs and be responsible for it, so it doesn't fall on one side. That was a huge trap I fell into, was, well, I'll do the healing for everyone in the relationship, both of us. And it doesn't.
It's a heavy load. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work, no. Not if they're not willing to accept it and make a change themselves. And even when they say that they want to change, right? We still give out that little grain of hope. Oh, yes, it's going to happen. It's going to work. No, it doesn't.
Yep. Actions speak louder than words.
So true.
Yeah.
All right. So let's dive deep now, because this is what I want to learn about. How are we unknowingly recreating these patterns that are familiar to us? This is what I want to learn about. I read in your little info sheet that you put in, how do we feel this lack and discontentment from, patterns that we're creating ourselves, but we may not know that we're doing it?
Yep. I have 3 main points that I want to share with your audience today. And to begin, I'm going to talk a little bit about the unconscious mind. I highly doubt that for your group that it's new to them, but just to make sure that we're all on the same page, we'll just discuss briefly like unconscious mind 101. So what is in our unconscious mind is what we end up creating in our day-to-day life. And the unconscious mind is that sponge when we're young, and it absorbs everything that's going on around us. The conscious mind only can tangibly hold, a handful of facts from any given situation or experience, and the unconscious mind stores the rest. So when we are young, everything that we're exposed to, cultures, religions, TV shows, our families, our parents, all these things, the unconscious mind is just soaking it up and saying, okay, so these are the stories I have to then live from. And the conscious mind, it drives 90% of the decisions, and the unconscious mind drives 90% of our decisions, while the conscious mind is only getting about 10% say. So until we step out of, I think that I am thinking and logically doing all of the things, and start looking at, what is my actual programming? What's under the surface? It's like the iceberg in the ocean. You see the tip, and the tip is the conscious mind, but the bulk of the iceberg is under the water, and that is the unconscious mind. Okay, so now that we've covered that, I alluded to it a little bit in that description, but the first way that we start creating these unconscious, unknowing patterns of discontent in our relationships that leave us feeling unsatisfied is literally that unconscious programming of all of the stories you're carrying with you from your childhood as a kid. You know, what did you watch on TV? And I don't even have great examples. I mean, I feel like I watched Bugs Bunny when I was a kid, and it's hard for me to reflect. I grew up in a very rural area where we didn't actually have TV for quite a few years. But TV is a huge, huge influencer for us, because we just sit there and soak up the fairy tales, the how life should appear, the magical stories that are fictional, that are created, and then it stirs the emotion in us, and we want that.
And I think that's more so in kids' movies too.
Yes, absolutely.
More than adult movies. Just crazy.
Yeah, I know. I sometimes am amazed at the lessons that are taught in kids' movies, and I find them so profound and inspiring. And then at the same time, I'm equally dissatisfied with the fictional, irrational storyline that we end up wanting to try to live out. And no actual human can show up for you like that. It just can't work. But it's just so unsubtle. And I really refer to them as like sneaky little ninjas, because it's so common. It is so common, we think it's normal. And so we don't check ourselves. For instance, a couple examples, things that you guys can start asking yourself and thinking about on a deeper level than just, oh, yeah, a relationship is two people committed to each other. But what are relationships to you? Oh, you go to Facebook in your settings and you can say that a relationship is complicated. This is the common everyday way that we look at relationships. I don't know how many people, I can't even count, have told me relationships are so hard. It's common for relationships to be hard. They don't have to be. They really don't. But when we live from that space that this is what we were told, or we saw our parents struggle, or we saw a bunch of our friends' parents get divorced as we were growing up, we do then store that belief that it's got to be hard, and it's got to be complicated, and it's got to be a struggle, and it's got to be a fight, and you have to fight for what you want. Once we start changing those beliefs, that's when we can really start making those huge leaps forward in what we're creating. One other thing I want you can journal, ponder on it, is the definition of commitment. We all have our own definition for words. Yes, there are words, and Webster's dictionary, or going online to whatever dictionary comes up from Google or whatever search you're using. But that's not everyone's standard definition of the word. So if you start really thinking about commitment, what is commitment to you? We start digging into these stories of commitment being, man, I'm showing up every day. No matter how bad it gets, I'm just here because I said I would marry them, or I said I would be committed, or I said I would endure. So is it really like prison? Not to go back to my earlier work experience, but some people feel very imprisoned in the relationships that they're in because they made the commitment, and because they made a commitment, they continue to hold true to that promise. And so looking at what are those definitions around, relationships and commitment, and what love is. Even love, to one person I encountered, was, telling you what they thought. And that was not in an honest, open way. That was finding fault in everything. And because they were telling you what they thought, that was love because they were helping improve you. That might work for somebody, but it didn't work for me personally.
No. Especially when you hold on, when you are in a space of commitment and you're holding on just for the sake of holding on, right? When stuff is bad and it's toxic and you're not in a place where you want to improve it, but you're just doing it for the sake of doing it.
Right.
It
loses all
You've
of
got to be committed to growing and changing as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's a super valuable point, because when we are just showing up, it's like we just should.
Yep.
And there is such a different energy and vibration to, I should go run a mile, or I get to go run a mile. Like, my body is able and it does amazing things for me. And anytime that we are in that energy of should, because I made a commitment, there's not going to be a lot of heartfelt love and cherishing and compassion in that situation.
And that's sad. And it also, I just lost my train of thought, comes from a place where you are in a relationship and you're struggling and you're staying there just because you feel, I love that word too, should. The shoulds are the stop nows.
Yeah.
When you're like in the space of wanting to be there regardless of the shit, right? That's a different energy, and that's the difference. Even if stuff gets hard and complicated, but you still deeply want to be there. It's a totally different energy to just being there because when stuff
100%.
gets hard, and you know deep down. It's not like, oh, I don't know which one. You definitely know always which energy that's coming from.
Yeah, you really do. And if you're sitting there questioning and you're constantly caught in questioning, that's an answer in itself too. The ambivalence of, I'm 100% in and I'm just not sure, and swinging back and forth in that pendulum. That is a sign. Okay, so the second point or way that we create these unconscious patterns in our relationship that leave us feeling lack is actually asking and seeking advice from people around us. Now, a lot of people, this catches them by surprise because they do it so often. But if I were to come to you, Vanessa, and say, hey, what would you do in this situation if your significant other stayed out until 2 a.m. and whatever, and then I take your feedback, and what would you do? Well, you, Vanessa, you're not in this relationship. So it really isn't actually significant what you would do. And when we lack that self-trust and discernment in ourselves to know where our standard, where our boundary, where our self-respect lies, and we start looking for other people's compass to guide us, things get really complicated, because then I'm bringing a little piece of Vanessa into my relationship. And for the other person in my relationship, the expectations or the bar might keep moving around. And that makes things incredibly confusing in a relationship as well, because of inconsistency. Something's okay one day, but the next day it's not. So then they don't know actually how to love or serve you, or what direction of the wind are you dealing with today?
I feel that's very, when you ask for advice to people, become very one-sided. Like it's a battle or it's a game or something. When you start asking for other people's advice, it's not how can we work together and change things. It's this person or this person is right. I agree with you or I agree with the other person. And it becomes, I think that then puts more of a split in the relationship rather than trying to fix it.
Absolutely. That's such a valid point. It becomes, I don't know, human nature. I have to take sides.
Yeah.
So I certainly, hear me clearly, I'm not saying that we cannot seek wisdom from individuals who are going to be focused on, here's some really solid relationship advice of what makes relationships work. The pitfall is in what would you do, or what do you think I should? Wherever a should is involved, it become very weary. What should I do? How should I respond? When you get into the specifics of having someone else essentially make the decision for you, that's going to complicate things more often
Yep.
than it's going to simplify them. And yeah, no one should have to be pulled in as a third party to take sides or mediate a relationship either.
It's kind of a form of permission or validation as well when you're asking someone else to validate your reasons behind something, which means you're coming at it all wrong anyway.
Absolutely. When you're so solid in who you are and what you desire, where your boundaries are set, other people's influence shouldn't shift that, shouldn't alter that. And if it does,
So true.
then are you growing? Are you truly growing and you're shifting? There's a difference between shifting and just following the guidance of someone else. All right, and my third point is really the biggest one. And it is that we recreate the relationships that our parents had. And a lot of people hear that we marry our father if we're women, or we marry our mother if we're sons. But the actual truth is that we mirror elements of what our parents did. And so when you do this, you're bringing in what my parents did, the significant other is bringing in what their parents did, and then all of a sudden you have approximately 6 people trying
Wow.
to function in a relationship. And granted, 4 of them aren't actively there every day, but the influence of it is there. And this is by far the biggest, most challenging one for people to see. In fact, when I sit down to work this with individuals, we talk about the structure of it, we talk examples, we talk about what it looks like, and they're like, yeah, I don't do that. But then I ask a couple key questions, and they start telling me all of the things about their family dynamics. And we write it out, and they look at it and they're like, oh my goodness, I do every single one of those things. Every one of them.
You start to see the patterns.
Uh-huh. So I want to give an example of how that works for your audience to hopefully have that, start drawing that self-awareness.
Sure.
Because we truly do focus on, I did, and I think a lot of the people that I work with, I know have as well, getting really stuck on hyper focusing. I am not going to do X, Y, and Z that my parents did. And so we don't think that we are recreating our parents' patterns. And there's specific ones that we become just so focused on we're not going to do that we miss the totality of our actual choices and behaviors. And so one example of this is like perhaps someone is not wanting to emulate how their parents, maybe when their parents had a fight, after the fight, one would go buy gifts and really manipulate the other one with money or gifts or bright, shiny objects and make them feel good. And so, okay, I am not going to be this person who is going to spend a lot of money whenever there's a situation to resolve an argument. Okay, got it. Not doing that. But maybe instead what's happening is just complete avoidance of confrontation so that there's no negative emotions or feelings that have to come up. We'll just avoid the conflict and always have peace. So what happens is that we see that the gifts, they didn't resolve the issue, and it just was making negative emotions go away. So we're not doing that, but what we are doing is this avoidance technique of just not even talking about the problems, and the result is actually the same. You're not resolving the issue, and there's no negative feelings then to deal with. Not that the negative feelings don't exist, not that there aren't still dynamics of struggle or things that could be improved. So it doesn't matter how your parents did it. It's not going to likely look exactly the same the way you're doing it, but underneath it is the same behavior, creating the same type of trap or pitfall within the relationship.
Wow. So you're always getting the same outcome regardless of how you're going about doing the thing.
Exactly.
That's so crazy. I think it's because you focus on that one little thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But deep down, the limiting belief is so much bigger. Wow.
Yeah, we just truly, in our human nature, we go where we're comfortable, and where we're comfortable is oftentimes familiarity. And so we're familiar to certain outcomes. And that is where the behavior to the outcome might look different, but the outcome is still the same.
So do you think then that it's driven by limiting beliefs that are passed down?
Some of them, I believe,
watching the patterns.
Both. Yeah, for sure. I think it's both. So there's family system dynamics that come into play in all of the psyche, in being a human. But there's also all of that unconscious limiting beliefs, phobias, fear, being fear driven. How many women stay in relationships just because they're scared of being able to make it on their own, or however many other consequences would come from their family being torn apart. And fear is very overwhelming from an unconscious standpoint as well.
For sure. And do you think on that level of fear, because I love overcoming fears, for parents that have split, do you think it's a fear thing to hold on to a toxic relationship? Because you're not wanting to follow the parents?
I think it depends on the relationship, on the relationship. Yeah. I think there are some individuals who, like you just said, follow their parents. Their parents had toxic elements in their relationship, and so that's their normal. They don't even identify them necessarily as toxic, or maybe they do and they can't figure out how to break them. I also feel as though sometimes it is more of the consequences are just so tangible that the fear of delivering something less than to their parents, or to their children, I'm sorry, delivering less than to their children by the parents splitting is just something that they'll sacrifice their own happiness. And in doing so, they don't understand how their child then is absorbing all of these impressions and dynamics of what relationships look like. And then they're going to have to someday come to terms with, well, what actually works for them.
It's a vicious cycle.
It is one that can continue to repeat. But there's people like you and I, Vanessa, and I'm sure many of the people that are watching on replay or watching now, that they know, like I knew in my heart, I came to break many of the patterns and cycles within my family. And I think that's a common theme amongst a lot of healers out there, and empaths for sure. But it does not have to be what it was. And we all have the empowerment within us to step out. And once we do that a few times, the fear melts away. I'm sure you can talk at length about that, and knowing how much that you love to, blow up those fear bombs.
It's just that one, right? That you've got that one enormous hurdle that's not so big that you blow right out of proportion that you've got to cross.
Yeah. Once you get started, it gets easier to do it time and time again.
For sure. And the longer you put it off, the bigger it gets in your mind, right?
Yeah, that is for sure. A mountain. It becomes a mountain. So there's a great tool that I'm sorry.
I was just saying, and it's not for those listening.
Yeah, we definitely need to reinforce that. And even for those that truly are a mountain, because let's not just say everything's rainbows and butterflies. There are many relationship circumstances where maybe you are coming to see reality when you are standing at the bottom of Mount Everest, but it's one step. It's one piece of sand at a time. It's not moving the whole mountain at once. So even if you are in one of those spaces where it's the worst of the worst, so to speak, it doesn't all happen at one time. And you are going to make it. Like, you have what you need within you to take each step one at a time to get there.
So true.
There is a fabulous tool that I would love to share with your audience as well for reprogramming the unconscious mind and building some new neural pathways so our thoughts can shift, the fears can fall away, the limiting beliefs reprogram. Tapping has been used for traumas and killing cravings of food and increasing your mood, all sorts of amazing, wonderful things. So I would love to walk through and demonstrate a tapping technique that combines two different kinds of tapping. So one of the most common tapping out there is EFT. And so when we start with that, if anyone has experienced EFT before, it'll be familiar. But hang in there because at the end, we're going to combine in another form of tapping. It's really, really powerful to reprogram the brain.
Amazing. I've only done it, I think, twice in my whole spiritual journey. I've delved into tapping, but I've never like gone deep into it. So I'd love to hear about how you use it and
Yeah, we'll just walk through it, and everyone can use it for whatever we've talked about here. I don't like to stir the pot and bring things up to the surface and then leave people hanging. So if there's something that we've talked about here in our discussion with what you think commitment is, and it's maybe not super favorable of what you would like commitment with someone else to look like, or a relationship, or some of the things you see with your parents' dynamics, the unconscious programming that you're waiting for this fairy tale and Cinderella and the glass slipper, whatever that is, just go ahead and draw your awareness and your mind to that. And then on a scale of 1 to 10, I just want you to assess, with 10 being the worst, how strong, how much of an emotional charge does it feel like there is for you with that topic? All right, so then once we have our topic at mind, and I will just throw out there too, you can tap without specific intention like this. However, if there's something that you are stumbling in your relationship with, the more intentional you are with the tapping, the faster you're going to see those results. So this can be done either way. For individuals who struggle with anxiety, I recommend that they do this as part of their getting ready for the day routine and getting ready for bed. And it's not necessarily intentional, it's just moving the energy through the meridian points, the pathways, the energy pathways in our bodies.
So is this used primarily for a clearing tool and not a calling in tool? Or can you use it for calling in, just clearing?
I only use it for clearing, for releasing and reprogramming and shifting, creating those new pathways in our brain so our brain starts telling us a different story.
Yeah, for sure.
So the first point is on the hand, and you can do a karate chop, or I like to do both of my hands together, so I tap them this way, but either way, you're going to get the same results. And so we're just going to speak a sentence. I completely and totally love and accept myself, even though and we'll say, have a limiting belief. I don't know what you guys are going to be focusing on, so feel free to use your own verbiage and make it as specific to you as need be. I completely and totally love and accept myself, even though I have this limiting belief. Even though I have this limiting belief, I totally and completely love and accept myself. So we're going to say that 3 times, and then we're going to move to the crown of our head. And then at the bridge of our nose, in between the eyebrows. And then all the way around the eye sockets.
And do you keep saying the limiting belief as you go, or are you intentionally placing your thoughts on it as you're doing it, or are you continuing to say it out loud as you go?
Well, you can do it any of the ways. I encourage people just to be mindful of the self-talk of what they're hearing in their mind as they go through it, because it will eventually start shifting just simply by doing the tapping.
Cool.
So the next point is under the nose on the top lip. And then under the bottom lip. And then just below our collarbone. And then about 2 inches down, and it's approximately 2 inches out from the sternum. And then underneath our armpits, it's typically about where the broad line goes for women, or 4 inches under the armpit, but in between two ribs, you'll usually feel these spots as being a little bit tender. So that's how you know you're in the right area. However, the tapping works, I have read in different traditional Chinese medicine books, as long as you're within a couple inches of the meridians. So you don't have to worry about being exact.
Yep.
The next point is going to be directly below the nipples between the very bottom rib and the second rib. And then we want to go at the nail bed line on the top side of the finger. And we're going to go through every single finger on both sides of the hand. And all of these places are connected to different organs in our body, and different organs in our body are responsible for processing different emotions. For instance, the liver is connected to anger and is the powerhouse of our anger. Our kidneys are connected to fear. And as we tap on these different meridian points or pressure points, then we are moving that energy through our physical body and releasing it. Which is why there's such a broad impact for so many different things, with traumas, phobias, limiting beliefs, food cravings, allergies, anxiety, stress, shame. So then we're going to tap on the back of our hand between our ring finger and our pinky. And then we're going to do a series with our eyes. And first, it will seem like we're not doing anything at all. We're just going to keep our eyes open and tap on the back of our hand the entire time. And then close our eyes. Open our eyes and look down to the left. And I encourage people to use their room as a reference, because sometimes our eyes won't want to go all the way down or all the way over. So try looking at the corner of the room. And then we're going to look down into the right or the other direction. And then we're going to move our eyes in a circle through each corner of the ceiling, up to the left, down to the floor to the left, over to the right at the floor, up to the ceiling at the right, and just keep going until that becomes smooth. And you want to make sure that you do move your eyes all the way through, and then go ahead and go in the other direction to each of those 4 points, because trauma will actually cause our eyes to glitch in certain areas, depending upon which area of the brain that experience is stored. And since we're releasing, we want to release from all areas of our brain and not miss any. So the next thing we're going to do is hum. And you can just hum a tune. It doesn't matter what you hum. And then we will count to 40 by twos. 2, 4, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32, 34, 36, 38, and 40. And then to do a full round, and I will share the link, there's a tutorial. We would start with the head again and just go through the first points to our fingers. But typically at this point, people are already feeling relief. So I just encourage after yeah, you feel relaxed. Exactly. So after the first round of tapping, you can check in and on that scale of 1 to 10, okay, now with that intention, how much of a charge is there? Is it still where it was? Is it higher? Like, did you peel back some, animosity and some old stuff, and there's that even more charge? Just do another round. It happens. It's not common, but it can happen. Or is it lower? Are you already releasing and shifting your mindset?
And do you recommend doing that like daily if it's, some kind of trauma or belief that you've had for a long time, or would it instantly release in one session?
Yeah, it depends on the person. As I mentioned, if there's someone with anxiety, I actually recommend them using it twice a day. So it really depends on each individual person. And I'm sure with your work as well, there are other tools that build those neural pathways quicker. And I utilize those tools in my individual work with people, but I love for people to have these tools. And maybe it takes you 10 minutes to do that tapping, but you're able to continue making progress on your own. And I think that is so important and so powerful. So
Sure, yeah.
my clients report the more they tap, the better they feel. And so it's a matter of how much space and time do you want to invest in yourself and have time to utilize these tools and put them to use.
Yeah, I think it'd be beautiful too to add tapping to like your meditation process, whether you do it at the beginning or at the end. I think it would be really nice at the beginning, so then you can just sit in that energy for a while.
Yeah, it definitely helps ground and center.
Curious to know, because I've never actually heard about the eyes before. That was interesting. Is that like opening up windows when you move in the eyes to allow the energy to release?
It is part of what I understand to be part of the reprogramming. So it's not necessarily releasing, but there are different things that we can do, such as holding the front and back of our head, that will allow it'll calm, because these are the fight or flight points. So this calms our nervous system. And then the back is connected to the visual part of our brain, where the emotions and how we see a scene that's happened earlier in our life. So it's just another portion of allowing us to really have that empowerment to not be hung up in something that happened before and be carrying the heaviness of that around, but to open us up to, okay, I had that experience. Now, what did I learn from it? Because once we take the learning, once we take the lessons, we break out of the pattern. And so it's just another way to reprogram and allow that openness to come in so we can begin to see things differently and move forward.
So true. And to get the learnings from an event or a past trauma, whatever you want to call it, limiting belief, that's the key to releasing. You can release as many trapped emotions as you want, but it's not until you get the learnings, right, that it's going to fully release on you, because this pattern will keep coming up until you learn from it. It's trying to teach you something.
100%. We are in school every day of our lives.
I do that a lot. I do root cause therapy, and yes, it's easier to just release the trapped emotions, but you're not going to fully get any kind of long-term release or effect until you're actually getting the learnings from our subconscious are very tricky, and our guides will always keep pushing us into the same kind of event until you learn from them.
They sure will.
So important. I just want to touch on just really quickly. In your bio, you talked about our labs. I just wanted to see what you refer to as our personal labs, and how do we know like what's normal for us? Is that a technique that you use, or?
That's actually referring to blood labs. So that's the functional medicine aspect. Yeah, because the physical health that we have in a relationship really impacts our relationship. People who deal with anxiety or depression or infertility issues, that can unfortunately break many people's relationships, because when they hold that dream of having a child, they don't always make their way through that transition of accepting that maybe that's not going to be their future. So I incorporate that physical health aspect as well, and using the functional medicine, reading blood labs in a specific way with shorter, smaller ranges before it gets to the point of there's kidney disease or heart failure or some big diagnosis, being able to give people tools and information and knowledge to keep their body working as optimally for them as possible and intervene before it gets to a place where they're dealing with major health issues.
For sure, and it's always about shifting stuff energetically before it gets to that point, right?
Yeah,
This
and with
illness.
Yep, with the mind body approach, it's not just a matter of there's something going on in my body, there's always that manifestation of emotion as well. So it's just really truly treating holistically the entire being at all levels.
Beautiful. Just before we wrap it up, I always ask if there is a message that you want to share with the world. What is your love message to the world?
Aside from what I've already shared here, I feel like this is so much of my message, but just compassion for other people. I feel as though sometimes it can be so easy to forget that we really don't know what's going on in other people's lives and to take things personally. And it's just, people need healing. We're living in a world where that is our reality. Like, looking even just very small picture at the conditions that we all have been enduring or learning and growing through in the last 2 years. And some people have tools and are equipped to do it better than others. And even if someone does act in a way that doesn't align with who you are, having that compassion and extending love back to them is so much more powerful than responding in kind.
So true. So true, and so powerful not to react.
Not always easy, but
no, not at all, especially when it's very confronting, but just that's so beautiful. Just sharing, a second of compassion with someone might change their whole day, their week, their month, their year.
Yep. And don't underestimate the little things. Recently, I was in a restaurant and it was very, very crowded and there was only one server. I mean, we're also living in this time where just the world around us is different and businesses finding employees is challenging. And she was running, literally, I saw her run from table to the back and back out. And there was a whole doorway of people waiting to come in and get seated, but the tables hadn't been bussed. And so there were dishes everywhere. And she had the tables eventually, like probably 20 minutes later, got them bussed so she could seat people, but they weren't cleaned off yet. And there was just a rag on the table. And so I got up and I started wiping the tables off, because that takes 30 seconds of my dining experience. No big deal. And she was so stressed out. She broke down in tears and she's like, "Oh, can I give you a hug? I mean, the smallest things can really change someone's day." Be that light for other people.
Would get me chills. I feel that coming from a hospitality background, and that can go two ways, right? People can just get angry and just that would have probably brought her to tears as well, just people yelling at her for the lack of service.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful that you chose to go the other way. Love that. Love that. Love that. It's so beautiful. I love your energy, Janessa. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your beautiful wisdom with us. I'm sure the ladies will love to watch the replay. And when you are watching the replay, guys, still comment, because I'm still going to see your comments in the group. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your afternoon with us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And thank you I'm going to timestamp the tapping session as well for those that want to come back and do the tapping session a few times. Thank you so much for sharing that tool. I'm sure it's going to be a great help to those that are looking to shift limiting beliefs on their own and start doing that as a daily practice. I think that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, dear souls, for joining me on this sacred journey. If you enjoyed this soul-nourishing experience, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the little bell icon so you can stay connected and never miss a moment of our soulful exploration. Let's keep this transformative conversation going in the comments below. Share your insights, your dreams, and the magical moments you encounter. This is a community of like-minded souls, and your voice matters. If you're feeling called to dive even deeper into the realms of intuition and soulful living, remember that I'm here for you. Reach out to me through the links in the description. Let's embark on a personalized adventure to help you create the life of your dreams. This is Janessa signing off from the Sacred Soul Shift series. Stay enchanted and keep shining bright.